All right, hello and welcome back. So in this video, we're going to focus on how to add event listeners and how to get JavaScript to understand when we click a button, when we have what our value of our text is up here, and how we're going to create a way to actually add the post to this section when we say we want to add it, and then add it in the code. So that's what we're going to be focusing on. So let's go ahead and jump right into it. So if you want to do something like when a user clicks a button, do something in JavaScript, that's called an event. So an event is, for example, clicking on something. So there are tons of events on JavaScript, or on HTML elements. So for example, let's just do button events HTML. So there are tons of events that we can actually use here. So there's on after print. I don't know what that is. Oh, these don't look. These are window events. So let's go down to keyboard events. Well, there's mouse events. We'll just do keyboard. So keyboard is on key down, which is like, when a key goes down initially. Then there's on key press, just when the person presses it. And there's on key up. So that's when the key comes up. So that's when, like, let's say you're holding a key like D, and you're still holding it, the event hasn't fired yet. Only when you let go does it fire. And then on here, there's like on click, there's on double click, on mouse down, on mouse move, on mouse out. That's when you on mouse over and on mouse out are when you highlight over an element. So let's say there was an event on this tab, on this little section right here. This is on mouse over and on mouse out. There's tons of events. Also, most of these you will never use, so please do not get. I have never used any of these. Most of the time you'll just be using some of the mouse events. Like almost all of these you might use, but you don't need to memorize them. You should try to, but in programming, please do not try to get overwhelmed with all the stuff in the documentation. I mean, you look at all this and you're like, wow, this is just one page of shit I gotta know, and there's tons of other stuff in here. I probably don't know like 40% of the tags in here, like source. I actually don't know what that is. Option, never used that. Never used param, never used I know what frame is, but I've never used it. Yeah, there's just tons of stuff that you're not going to know because you're probably never going to use it. So please do not be overwhelmed. Just remember that you don't have to memorize all this. You should try to memorize the stuff that you use the most, and that's a lot of the time just completely optional. That's totally up to you. Like, that optional as in, what do you want to learn? That's your choice. So let's look at the mouse events and let's decide what we want to do. So I'm going to say, take a moment to pause the video and decide from which of these events would we want to use if we want to detect when a user clicks on a button. All right, so pause the video. All right, and welcome back. Hopefully it was pretty simple for you. I tried to explain it without being too obvious there at the end, but I think it's pretty obvious. We want to use the on-click event. So this is it. So there's one way to use it. There's actually multiple ways to use on-click. This is an HTML tag, as you probably recognize. One of the ways you can do it is actually put on-click as a what's it called? As a attribute for the HTML tag. You can do that. I was right there. I didn't see it up there. So you can put it in there, and then you can link to a function that's in a JavaScript file. So my function would be in the JavaScript file that's corresponding. But this really isn't the best thing to do because sometimes it's just messy code. It's not very clear when you go to the JavaScript file how your button's actually being activated. It's not very clear. So we don't want to do that. So we're going to do a different method where we don't have to do that because we already have the post add button in here. We already have it. So shouldn't we be able to actually access it? Like, is there a method or a property of the post add button class / object that we can actually get to? Well, of course there is. This is JavaScript. So let's go ahead and let's do it. So down here, what we're going to do is we got to decide. So how do we build this query that we're going to build to give it an event listener of click? So we got to access the actual post add button first. So post add button dot, and you're going to see tons of methods, and here's the one we want: add event listener. So it's just add event listener. And this is a function. This isn't a property. This isn't a property because we're trying to do something. A property is when you try to access something. We're trying to do something right now. We're trying to do something to this. So adding an event listener is actually a method of not just post add button, but the root of post add button, the type of post add button. And the type of post add button is an HTML element because, well, it's an HTML element. So every HTML element has the ability to have event listeners. So of course there's going to be an add event listener button, and also there's a remove event listener button, or not button, but method. Of course we don't want to add, we don't want to remove, we want to add. And this takes in two parameters. First, it takes in what type of event you want. So in quotes, we're going to type the event. So click, and then get out, and boom. Now we have click. Now it takes in another parameter, and this is the first time that you're going to be looking at embedded functions. These are also called anonymous functions. Mostly they're called anonymous functions, actually. And what they are functions that are called in, they're passed in as a parameter into a function, and they don't have a name. So you don't type like function event listener. You don't do that. You just type function, and then you open up the quotes, take in any input you want, which we don't really need any, and then you just open it up like that. And it looks very weird, I know it looks very weird because you have these quote, like what is this? You might get confused. Well, this just corresponds with this. You could just keep it on the same line. It's the exact same thing, especially if you had small amounts of code. Like if you just had, you know, return blah, and that's it, which you would never have something that simple. But yeah, so now what we need to do is in here, this function, what this is this is going to be called when click is activated. So if we save and we do console.log, we'll say working. Actually, let's do something else. Let's not do console.log. There's a new function we're going to show you guys, which is alert. So alert, you might have seen this dialog box in Chrome or your browser before. Alert actually gives us a message right here in the front. So we can alert anything. We could be like button pressed. We save that, and when we click the button, it says button pressed. And that's it. Every time we click that button, it's going to say that. So that's the simplicity of it. So it's just, you take the HTML element you have, you do add event listener, you do the click type that you want, not the click type, sorry, the event type, and then the callback function. So this is the function that's activated when the click event is actually, when it actually occurs. All right, so what kind of code are we going to want to put in here? So in this code, what we're going to want to do is let's do something called pseudocode first. So pseudocode is when you plan out what you want to do, and then you code around it. So we want to think about how we want to do this. So this is a great way to really get yourself thinking about how do I want to do this? How do I want to organize it? So that way when you go in, the code is generally speaking much easier to write. So pseudocode is just writing comments. So comments I'm going to show you, you could just do in JavaScript. In some languages, it's different. So writing a comment in JavaScript is just 2 slashes. And you see how it may turn green in your editor? That means that now we can write a comment. So we can actually write English. We could be like, we need to get the users to do text from, just get the users to do text. And this will be ignored. If I remove the slashes by doing control/, some IDEs support control/, which immediately toggles the line you're on as a comment or not. You can see it's reading it as JavaScript, and it's like, what the hell is what is this? What is, you know, what is this stuff? This makes no sense. So you don't want to do that. So get the users to do text. Pretty self-explanatory. All right, once we got the users to do text, what is the next step? Well, actually, let's do a check first, because I'm thinking like, so get the users to do text. What could possibly go wrong in that statement? Another thing you're doing when you write code is you want to try to think about any possible errors that could occur. And what is a possible error that can occur for getting the user to do text? And I don't want you to think about like the methods. I don't want you to think about the functions or anything like that. I don't want you to think in JavaScript code. This is a very basic logic thing right now. This is a very basic logic conundrum we're in. So what would happen if we're getting the users to do text from this box, because we're going to do that later, and we wanted to add it? Are there any checks we should do to this to do text to make sure that it is ready to be put in this post section? Is there anything that we might want to check to make sure that it's okay to add? All right, so go ahead and pause the video and think to yourself. And if you have a good answer, go ahead and continue. All right, and welcome back. So hopefully you had the idea of what we want to do here. I'm sorry if I didn't make it very clear. It's kind of hard to explain, but I wanted to make sure it wasn't about it wasn't about the JavaScript. It's about just the logic of this little app here, because sometimes you're going to want to add logic into your app to make sure that it's more friendly and not adding a waste of data. So what I mean by that is, if we were to add a post and there's no data here, there's nothing here, you didn't put anything in, then why should we add it? There's nothing here. There's no reason to add something that doesn't have any value, literally, and also, so if there's nothing here, we should not add the post. So there's a couple ways we can do this. First of all, we can do a simple check, which is like outside. We can do, I'm just gonna write a really quick if check. We could just do something like if post text. Well, I'm not gonna actually write it because I don't want to spoil some things. So we could check in the code, like, if this is empty, then disable this button, and then once you put something in it, the button becomes enabled, which we'll actually do that later. But for now, let's just do something simple. We'll just say, like, check if users to do text is empty, and it's like, this is assumed. Now I'm going to tab in. So I'm going to tab in. I do that with tab and do another comment. And what this means is we're doing a check. So this is going to be like an if statement. And then if this, when we tab in, that's like the indentation of this statement. So that means, like, if this is true, then we're going to come in here and we're going to say, okay, so if it's true, then just don't add post. Break. We'll use that later. All right. Then we come in here with another comment, and let's say, so if this is true, so if there's text for the post, then we just want to, we already have the user's post, so we want to add it. So we want to say, like, okay, so we want to generate an ID, so we want to create a post, with all data. So basically an ID, a value, a date. So we'll have to do that. And then what we want to do is we want to add it to the posts array, and then also add it to the posts UI. All right, perfect. So that's the pseudocode, and that's basically it. So in the next video, so that's it for this video. And in the next video, we're going to be looking at filling this all with code and getting going on it by making it actually work and not just some stupid pseudocode that we have right now. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.